Church, what we need is something new, don't you think? We need newness in the worst sort of way. The political arena that we are living in this country is way too partisan. It's way too tribal. And politicians are driven by corporate lobbyists and corrupted by greed and self-interest. And they're not serving the interests of the people, don't you think? Church, our healthcare system is too expensive, and our nurses that do the dirty work aren't paid nearly enough. Church public education is challenged by overcrowded classrooms, and underpaid teachers struggle to provide adequate learning environments. Students are faced every day with bullying, the fear of violence and mass shootings, social media, and drugs. I learned just this morning at Lincoln High on Friday, many students did not show up because of fear of guns being carried into the school and a mass shooting taking place. Lincoln High did lessen the police oversight from 5 to 1, but will have to reinstate more police just to keep order in the school. Our churches struggle to keep up with the postmodern world that we live in. What other institution, church, seeks to be relevant and to keep up with the postmodern world? I mean, 4 generations of people at one time. How can we keep all of you happy? Because 4 generations of people, you don't communicate with the same language. You don't listen to the same songs. You don't communicate in the same way. How we organize our life together. How do we serve the wider community with 4 generations? Our prisons are too overcrowded, and society doesn't understand anything about prison reform. We are a nation on drugs. Every single day, 8,120 people age 12 and over try drugs for the first time, and another 12,800 people try alcohol for the first time, meaning every single day 20,000 people try drugs and alcohol for the first time. Drugs, you probably know, are the #1 cause of crime. And more than half of our nation's prison inmates are in there because of drug conviction. American teenagers use drugs at a higher rate than teens in any other country in the world. And we are spending over $470 billion a year because of drugs and alcohol. Yes, what we need is something new. We need a new voice. We need some restoration in the midst of all of the brokenness that we see around us in our country, this land that was once referred to as the American dream. We've tried old solutions. We've tried former strategies. Previous programs that once were a success, but none of them change much of anything anymore. Because we need something fresh. Something that somebody hasn't thought of before. Something so entirely new. The prophet Isaiah was sort of thinking along the same lines in today's first lesson from the 65th chapter of Isaiah. And Isaiah announces to a people attempting to rebuild their lives after the Babylonian exile that God is about to do something new. And prayers are about to be answered in a new way. And the city of Jerusalem is about to experience a rebuilding process. And the temple will be restored. That was good news. And God is on the move. And when God is on the move, something new will spring forth. Don't you see it? Don't you hear it? History is just full of times when destruction and death seem to have the final word. In today's second lesson from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 21, verses 5 through 19, it's an eschatological text, meaning the language will talk about the end times. And we find Jesus and his disciples strolling by the courts of Jerusalem's magnificent second temple built by King Herod the Great. And Jesus and his disciples engage in conversation about the beauty of this architectural masterpiece. My God, they live north in Nazareth, 90 miles away. It's so entirely different. It's like people growing up in, what can I think of, a small town in western Nebraska, 500 miles away, Wilsonville. Isn't that a town? Growing up in Wilsonville, and you come to Lincoln for the first time, and you see the Capitol, and Memorial Stadium, and the Haymarket. Wow! We didn't know such things existed. Such huge polished marble stones. The largest being 40 tons and 41 meters long. The disciples can't get over themselves about this Roman city. I mean, they're used to the small villages, 200, 300 people, maybe 1,000 at the most. They've been to Capernaum. They lived in Capernaum, some of them. Capernaum was 1,800 people in Jesus' day. Jerusalem was a metropolis, 25,000. Cities didn't get bigger than that in Jesus' day. A building like this, made of such marvelous stones, is going to last forever. What could possibly destroy this magnificent place, this house of God, the administrative, economic, religious center for a whole nation, the temple in Jerusalem? And Jesus has to play the bad guy and tells his disciples that stone upon stone will fall down, and the whole temple complex will be destroyed. And disciples are thinking to themselves, what a lunatic. And 4 decades later, just four decades later, when Luke writes this gospel, it will have happened. 70 AD. The temple is destroyed. And Luke knows the story. And he knows what the population of Jerusalem went through. And he knows how they had to escape from Jerusalem and go south to the Judean wilderness. And Luke writes knowing that Vesuvius has erupted and destroyed Pompeii, one of the most lavish places on earth. And people died by fire and earthquakes, which caused this massive eruption on Vesuvius. And so Luke has these things in mind when he writes this gospel. That's why he uses the language that he uses. It's time for something new. Well, Jerusalem is destroyed because the Roman Empire finally got fed up with all the peasant revolutions and the Jewish rebellions against Caesar. And so Vespasian sends his son Titus, general of the army and the 10th Legion, and Titus comes in, destroys Jerusalem, carries the temple loot back to Rome, much of which gets put into the Colosseum that's built a decade later. The victories recorded on the Arch of Titus, and you see that, the arch in the photo, the menorah, and the armies carrying back things, candlesticks and stuff from the temple. When the temple came to an end in 70, it was if all the Jewish hopes for a free nation came to an end. And there was more than one person that was down on their knees and said, "Where is God in all this? When is the Messiah going to come?" And Luke names the fears, and he names the uncertainty, and he names the chaos that the people are living in firsthand. And in verses 7 and 8 of Luke 21, he talks about false leadership. Our leaders just aren't good enough anymore to lead the people. And he talks about war and world violence in verses 9 through 11. And he talks about arrests and persecutions and hatred and endurance in verses 12 through 19. He talks about it because this is what the people of Jerusalem are living under. And it's horrible. They lived under it again in the 30s and the 40s in Nazi Germany, when the whole race was threatened with extinction. But Luke, wouldn't you know? Luke writes and tells us that the disciples hear about the assurance given by Jesus that when all seems lost and all seems destroyed, that they can trust in God because God hasn't abandoned them. That God is going to put a song, a new song in their hearts, and God will give them the strength and the courage and the perseverance they need to bring about a new vision for the community and for the world, even in the midst of times that are most challenging and difficult. You sort of throw that question into the minds and the hearts of the people that I work with through addiction, and challenge them with the question, where do you see something new happening in your life? Embrace it. Hold on to it. God has not abandoned you. Life of disciples who walk with Jesus, it's so easy to be impressed with expensive things like temples and powerful armies and state-of-the-art weapons and huge bank accounts and impressive homes. The bigger, the better. But in the end, in our own end times, our life will be measured by our discipleship, by the way that we follow the footsteps of Jesus, the one that we have chosen to follow. About how we show compassion and kindness and the mercy that we offer to other people who are struggling and perhaps don't lead good lives. It's about the generosity of our service. It's about the courage to endure the times of crisis in our own lives without turning away from God or saying, God is dead or there is no God. Because we know in our hearts and in our minds experience peace on earth. And that we know shalom, which means wholeness and meaning and life purpose. And so like Jesus' church, in this postmodern world of the 21st century in Lincoln, Nebraska, let us live with newness in our minds. Let us embrace hope in our hearts and in our conscience, because we are called and we are commissioned by Jesus our Christ to deliver a message of hope to a world that perhaps lives in too much fear. We need something new. Let's go live it. We invite you to be a part of a community that seeks to bring hope into the midst of people whose lives are broken or in despair. And so we provide food, and we provide assistance, and we provide a place to pray and to come and be with God. We are thankful for this community.